slap landed with a crisp, indecent crack that cut through the soft purr of turbofan engines. Darius Cole didn't blink. He tasted copper and aviation-grade recycled air, smelled leather and citrus from the cabin's antiseptic wipe-down, and let stillness spread through his posture like poured glass. The flight attendant's palm retreated, her breath ragged, her pupils widened to coins. The rest of the crew froze mid-motion. A tray of lime wedges quivered. A safety card dangled from a passenger's hand. Somewhere a champagne flute chimed. Darius adjusted his tie, not as a shield, but as a decision. Calm first, then consequence. She had a name, Alyssa Grant, and a reputation for precision that should have precluded stupidity. Yet her jaw still jutted with the aftershock of impulse, and a thin white line of fury held her lips taut. "Sit down," she snapped, but the syllables sounded cheap now, returned to sender in the pressurized cabin. The co-pilot peered from the cockpit curtain, then vanished. Darius smoothed the edge of his cuff and let the moment breathe until the cabin shivered on its own. Somewhere, a weather cell bucked the jet and the floor trembled. Alyssa steadied herself on a seatback. Her hand shook just enough to confess everything. Darius turned his head the way a tide turns. The entire room felt dragged by the gravity of it. He did not raise his voice. "Captain," he said evenly, aware the interphone was live, "you'll hold us at current altitude for 10 minutes. A beat." "Sir, we're 10, Darius repeated. He faced Alyssa. "You just struck a passenger." She flinched. "An unruly passenger," she retorted. He studied her carefully, measuring not just her anger but the confidence behind it. Someone had promised she could get away with this. Promises interest him. Promises lead to contracts, and contracts lead to names. 10 minutes is a lifetime at 38,000 feet. It's also a clock you can set a change on. Darius crossed to the forward galley. The other attendants, the lead Matteo, the junior Celine, stared as if a painting had stepped off its canvas. "I'm going to ask 3 questions," he said, calm as cloud. "Consider your answers rehearsals for a second conversation you do not want." Alyssa folded her arms. "You're not in charge here." Darius's mouth tilted, not a smile. "That's the first incorrect statement today." A ripple of laughter crawled the cabin, nervous, unsure which god it had chosen. He pointed to the service door camera, the one discreetly embedded beside the jump seat. "Question 1. Which supervisor told you this aircraft would ferry a nobody today?" Silence throbbed. Matteo blinked. Celine's throat bobbed. Alyssa's chin stayed high. "No one needs permission to enforce decorum," she said. Darius inclined his head. "Question 2. Who instructed you to deny me identification when I boarded, then ignore my repeated request for your name?" A flicker. Celine glanced at Alyssa. "And question 3, he finished. Why did touching me feel safer than speaking to me?" The engines hummed, counting seconds like beads slipping through fingers. Alyssa's reply arrived brittle as hard candy. "Because you were disruptive." Darius's cheek still stung, a quiet metronome. "I asked for your name," he said. "You refused. Then you struck me for standing while you pretended not to hear." Her nostrils flared. "Passengers follow crew instructions." "Passengers follow lawful instructions," he corrected gently, "and crew follow training." His eyes softened briefly. "I founded the company that pays for this aircraft. The people who trained you built the curriculum on grants from my foundation. The uniform you're wearing was sourced through a vendor my team vetted. Tell me again who isn't in charge." The cabin attendant interphone clicked. The captain's voice, clipped, arrived like a ruler against knuckles. "Sir, we'll maintain altitude 10. Darius nodded once, even though the captain couldn't see it. He looked back to the passengers, his 2 engineers, his legal counsel, and a partner from Tokyo, each silent, each storing this moment for the legend file. Good. Legends travel faster than memos. Darius lifted a handset and pressed the button that connected to ground operations. "This is Cole," he said quietly. "I'm invoking Clause 7. Static. Then, understood." Engines droned. Alyssa frowned, uncomprehending, which was almost merciful. Clause 7 had been written in a conference room with bad coffee and excellent foresight. In any instance of discrimination or harassment aboard company aircraft, the owner reserved authority to assume command over staffing for the remainder of flight and terminate contracted personnel upon landing. He'd filed it after an ugly, quieter incident no camera caught. People called it overkill. People weren't here. Darius turned to the crew, clock running. "In 9 minutes," he said, "you will disembark at Denver under escort. Your credentials will be revoked pending review." He gestured gently, almost kind. "You may gather personal items. Nothing else." Alyssa laughed, a brittle breaking glass sound. "You're bluffing." Darius studied the bruise blossoming along his cheekbone in the dark lacquer of a cabinet door. He remembered other rooms, underwriting meetings where he was mistaken for catering, interviews where his patents were called accidents, one hellish merger where an executive patted his shoulder and said, "You've come so far," as if distance were a favor. He released the memory and chose the present. "Ms. Grant," he said, "my bluff would have cost you less." He clicked the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, a brief delay. 10 minutes will change our staffing. Thank you for your patience." Time moved like honey and law. Ground operations patched through to HR, legal, and the charter partner. Procedures blossomed with the neat brutality of a well-kept garden. Alyssa's bravado drained leaf by leaf. Celine began to cry, quietly, which was both apology and warning. Darius let silence do the heavy lifting. When the captain announced descent, Denver glittered beneath cloud like coins on velvet. Darius faced the crew one last time. "You chose force over respect," he said. "Today the choice chooses you. Stay with me. What happens after landing will explain everything." Denver International sprawled beneath them like a jeweled circuit board, runways gleaming under floodlights. As the jet descended, turbulence rolled, rattling champagne flutes. But Darius Cole remained unmoved. His cheek throbbed, purple and rising now, yet his stillness carried more weight than any outburst could have. Alyssa stood stiff near the galley, her arms crossed, jaw locked, trying to wear arrogance like armor. But the cracks showed. Her fingers tapped against her sleeve in uneven rhythms. Celine sat hunched, eyes red, staring at her shoes. Matteo pretended stoicism, though his throat worked nervously each time the landing gear roared. The tires kissed tarmac with a rubbery screech. Reverse thrusters bellowed. The aircraft slowed, taxied, and finally halted near a private hangar where black SUVs idled like patient predators. Darius adjusted his cuffs and spoke low but clear. "Collect your personal effects. You will be escorted from this aircraft in 3 minutes." Alyssa scoffed. "You don't get to dictate that." Darius pressed a button on the panel by his seat. The cabin phone crackled. A voice. "Ground security ready, Mr. Cole." His gaze locked with hers. "I don't dictate. I execute." The main door hissed open. Cold night air swept inside, carrying scents of jet fuel and damp asphalt. 4 security officers in dark suits boarded, their movements crisp, rehearsed. They weren't company contractors. These were Cole's private detail, trained like soldiers but dressed like executives. Each wore an earpiece, each radiated quiet lethality. The lead approached Darius and nodded. "Orders?" Darius didn't raise his voice. "Escort Ms. Grant, Mr. Alvarez, and Ms. Moreau to ground control. Strip their credentials. They are relieved of duty, effective immediately." Celine whimpered. Matteo muttered, "This is insane." Alyssa's laugh came sharp, desperate. "You can't do this." Darius finally let a smile touch his lips, though it was colder than the air spilling in. "I already have." The officers stepped forward. Alyssa jerked back, her bravado unraveling. "This is discrimination," she shouted. Darius tilted his head. "Her white attendant striking a black passenger is not discrimination. No, Ms. Grant, this is consequence." Her eyes flared, but the words snagged in her throat. She lunged once, futile, but the officers caught her arms, firm, but not cruel. Matteo followed without resistance, shoulders slumped. Celine rose last, trembling, her voice a whisper. "I'm sorry." Darius held her gaze, then turned away. Sorry was a bandage too thin for the wound. As the crew disappeared down the steps, reporters surged at the hangar perimeter, cameras flashing through rain-specked windows. Somehow the press had caught wind, circling like vultures scenting blood. Darius knew this would go public within hours. He welcomed it. Humiliation in private was survivable. Humiliation in public became history. He smoothed his tie and addressed his remaining staff, his 2 engineers, his counsel, his Tokyo partner. "Our itinerary holds," he said. "We lift again in 45 minutes. The world won't stop because a hand slipped." Yet privately he marked the tremor still alive on his cheek. This wound wasn't just personal. It was symbolic. On the tarmac, Alyssa's voice carried faintly through the roar of engines. "You'll regret this. You can't erase me." Darius's eyes narrowed as he watched her struggle against cameras, microphones thrust in her face. He knew she would run to the press, perhaps even be embraced as a whistleblower, painting herself the victim. That was the strategy of the unprepared, confuse noise for narrative. He would let her have her stage, and then he would build a stage so vast her voice would vanish beneath it. Back inside, he poured himself a glass of water, hand steady. His counsel, Miriam Shaw, leaned forward. "You've made a statement," she said carefully, "but this won't end here. She'll spin it." Darius sipped, unbothered. "Of course, that's the plan." Miriam frowned. "Plan?" He set the glass down. "Symbols matter, Miriam. That slap wasn't just an insult, it was an inheritance of centuries. They'll frame it as a spat between crew and passenger, but I'll frame it as what it is. A case study in power, prejudice, and consequence." His voice cooled further. "And when the narrative is mine, the city will never forget who wrote it." The engines whined outside as maintenance crews checked systems. Darius leaned back in his seat, letting the hum settle into his chest. 10 minutes of humiliation had become the seed of something greater. His grandmother's words flickered in memory. "Don't let them just touch your skin, Darius. Make them feel your shadow." Tonight, Alyssa had touched his skin. Now she would live in his shadow, and he intended to stretch that shadow until it covered the whole sky. Stay with this story. The fallout from Denver won't just touch Alyssa and her crew. It will ripple outward into headlines, boardrooms, and secrets that no one expected Darius Cole to expose. The headlines exploded before sunrise. Billionaire CEO orders crew fired mid-flight. Private jet slap scandal rocks aviation. Was it discipline or discrimination? News anchors replayed the grainy video of Alyssa screaming on the tarmac, her face twisted in fury as security escorted her away. The bruise on Darius Cole's cheek, photographed by a long lens, became the most shared image of the day. Commentators bickered across networks. Was he abusing his power? Was she abusing hers? The question electrified talk shows, podcasts, and timelines. For most of America, this was spectacle. For Darius, it was a lever. Inside Ellison Tower, a glass monolith downtown that bore his company's name, Darius sat at the head of a boardroom table. His executives were restless, eyes glued to their tablets streaming the chaos. "The media's eating this alive," Leonard, his COO, muttered. "If we don't respond carefully, it could tank partnerships." Miriam Shaw, his counsel, interjected sharply. "No, the danger isn't media, it's litigation. Alyssa will claim wrongful termination, harassment, discrimination in reverse. She'll paint herself the victim." The room turned to Darius, waiting for his verdict. He tapped the table once, the sound sharp as a gavel. "Good," he said. "Let her." Confusion rippled across the faces around him. He leaned forward, his cheek bruised stark under the fluorescent light. "Every empire needs its crucible moment. This is mine. Let the world watch as truth collides with arrogance. I don't want settlement. I don't want silence. I want trial." The executives shifted uneasily. Leonard whispered, "You're gambling the company's reputation." Darius's eyes glinted. "No, I'm investing it." By afternoon, Alyssa appeared on national television, seated beside a sympathetic anchor. Her makeup was flawless, her posture a study in rehearsed dignity. "He embarrassed me, degraded me," she said, voice trembling just enough. "I was doing my job. He used his wealth to destroy mine." The anchor leaned in. "And when you struck him?" Alyssa's lips tightened. "I felt threatened. Alone in the air with a powerful man who wouldn't." Clips circulated instantly. Hashtags multiplying. Power abuse. Protect workers. Stand with Alyssa. For a few hours, the tide seemed to turn her way. Darius watched silently, sipping tea. Miriam muttered, "She's winning the sympathy narrative." Darius smiled faintly. "Sympathy is a candle. I am the sun." That evening he released a single statement, not through press conferences, not through lawyers, but through his foundation's channels. "Transparency is my policy. Tomorrow, we release the entire unedited flight recording." The announcement detonated online. Suddenly, speculation shifted to anticipation. What did the footage show? Would it vindicate Alyssa or damn her? Darius had calculated it precisely. The cameras embedded in the cabin, part of his company's security protocols, had captured everything: her refusal to identify herself, her escalating hostility, and the slap that rang like a verdict. The next day, at 9 a.m., the video dropped. Uncut. 37 minutes of footage streamed across the internet. It showed Darius boarding quietly, greeting staff, taking his seat. It showed him requesting Alyssa's name politely, 3 times, only to be ignored. It showed his calm, his measured tone, her growing agitation. And then the slap. Loud, undeniable, cruel. The silence after it was worse than the sound itself. When the video ended, no commentary was needed. Hashtags flipped within minutes. Justice for Darius. Ra slapped the truth. Power in calm. By noon, Alyssa was trending again, but this time as a villain. Commentators dissected her expression, her arrogance, her miscalculation. Unions hesitated to defend her. Lawsuits faltered before they began. And through it all, Darius remained silent. Silence, he knew, was more powerful than rebuttal. Let the world talk. Let them build the legend themselves. But silence was not inaction. Behind closed doors, Darius began moving pieces. He instructed Miriam to launch an internal audit of Ellison Air's staffing contracts. "We're not just cleaning house," he said. "We're exposing the rot." She frowned. "That will drag allies into the mud too." He met her gaze. Then they shouldn't have been allies. Marcus, his younger brother and confidant, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "You're not just fighting her, you're fighting the system that enabled her." Darius nodded once. "Exactly, and the system doesn't know yet. It already lost." That night, as the city pulsed with neon and headlines, Darius stood at his penthouse window, the skyline reflected in glass. His phone buzzed with messages, threats, praise, offers, warnings. He ignored them all. Instead, he thought of the slap again, not the sting, but the silence that followed. That silence was a mirror. It showed him not weakness, but resolve. He whispered into the city lights, "You thought it was humiliation. It was coronation. Stay with this story. The video was only the spark. The true firestorm will come when Darius Cole uses the scandal to dismantle more than a crew. He will dismantle an empire of prejudice built to contain him." The release of the footage turned the scandal into a battlefield. Newsrooms buzzed with frantic rewrites. Anchors pivoted mid-segment, and pundits who had defended Alyssa just hours before scrambled to save face. Clips of the slap looped endlessly, side by side with Darius Cole's composed reaction. Commentators marveled. He didn't even raise his voice. He didn't flinch. Who does that? The answer was clear. Someone who had endured humiliation before and learned to turn it into fuel. Inside Ellison Tower, Darius convened a war council. Miriam Shaw, sharp as a blade, spread folders across the conference table. "The audits are unearthing irregularities in hiring, nepotism, favoritism, even suppressed complaints. Alyssa wasn't an accident, she was a symptom." Leonard grimaced. "Exposing this will crush our aviation partners." Darius's gaze was cool. "Good, let them fall. We'll build better." Marcus, lounging with deceptive ease, cracked his knuckles. "And if they push back harder?" Darius poured himself water, the glass sweating under his hand. "Then they confirm the rot. Every strike they make only proves my case." That afternoon, he made his first public appearance since the footage drop. The setting was deliberate. Not a glossy press conference, but a community center funded by his foundation. Children coded on laptops in the background. Volunteers served meals, and cameras clicked. Standing at a simple podium, his bruise still visible, Darius addressed the crowd. "This isn't about a slap. It's about systems that tell people like me we should sit down, stay quiet, accept disrespect. I didn't build an empire to bow to that, and I won't let anyone else bow either." The applause thundered, echoing into the evening news. But Alyssa wasn't finished. She doubled down, posting a tearful live stream from her apartment. "He's destroying my life," she sobbed. "I lost my job, my career, my future, just because I tried to do my duty. He wants to make an example out of me." Donations trickled into her GoFundMe, sympathy rekindled among those eager to believe her. Marcus tossed his phone down in disgust. "She's playing victim again, and some people are eating it up." Darius leaned back, unbothered. "Let them. Sympathy is temporary. Evidence is eternal." He turned to Miriam. "What's next in the audit?" Her reply was a dagger. We've found direct ties between Alyssa's supervisor and a contractor funneling kickbacks through staffing agencies. If this goes public, it won't just taint her. It'll implicate executives, city officials, even unions. Marcus whistled low. That's bigger than her. Darius's eyes sharpened. Exactly. She was never the point. She was the spark. The firestorm is the network behind her. He stood, the skyline glowing through the windows. Prepare the files. When we release this, the narrative shifts again. From personal to systemic. From slap to scandal. Days later, Darius walked into a boardroom filled not with his staff, but with journalists. He had called them in personally, breaking the usual PR protocols. On the table lay binders and hard drives. He didn't sit. He stood, tall and bruised, and spoke with measured calm. You wanted more than a headline. Here's your story. Cameras clicked as he laid it out. Staffing corruption, cover-ups, bribes. Names and numbers that tied Alyssa's arrogance to a chain of rot stretching far beyond her. Reporters scribbled furiously, sensing history. When one asked, "Why expose this now?" Darius replied, "Because the slap wasn't mine alone, it was everyone's who came before me." That night, the first exposés hit the airwaves. Cole unveils web of corruption behind slap incident. Anchors spoke of systemic bias, bribery, and exploitation. Alyssa's face shrank from victim to pawn. The city buzzed with outrage, investigations launched, and officials scrambled to distance themselves. Darius watched it unfold with a calm satisfaction. The slap was no longer a scandal about him. It was a doorway to dismantling the machinery that had always worked against him, and against people like him. But with exposure came danger. The more he revealed, the more enemies he made. Late that evening, as Marcus poured them both drinks, the phone rang. An unlisted number. Darius answered. A low voice growled, "Stop digging, or we'll bury you." The line went dead. Marcus cursed, slamming his glass down. "They're threatening you now." Darius swirled his drink, expression unreadable. "Good. That means they're afraid. And fear means they're already losing." He looked out at the city, neon slicing through rain-slick streets. His bruise throbbed like a reminder, not of pain but of purpose. He whispered to himself, "You can't bury what refuses to bow." Stay with this story. The threats have begun, and Darius is about to discover just how far the network behind Alyssa is willing to go to silence him. The threats didn't rattle Darius, not outwardly, but Miriam noticed the subtle signs, the way he lingered by windows, the way his security detail tightened their perimeters, the way Marcus rarely left his side anymore. Fear wasn't in his vocabulary, but vigilance was. "They won't come at you directly," Miriam warned, as she sifted through stacks of legal briefs. "Not yet. They'll attack reputation first. Money next. And if that fails, then you." Darius closed the folder in front of him. "Then let them. A crown isn't forged without fire." The next morning proved her right. Anonymous leaks splashed across tabloids, claims that Darius mistreated employees, doctored contracts, even whispers of offshore accounts. None of it true, but truth wasn't the point. The goal was to seed doubt. On social media, the hashtags began to fracture. Justice for Darius tangled with Azza expose Cole. Marcus paced the boardroom, fists clenched. "This is garbage. Lies." Miriam rubbed her temples. "Lies spread faster than truth." Darius simply poured coffee, calm as stone. "Then we'll drown their lies in daylight." He called a press conference, not in a hotel ballroom, but on the floor of his foundation itself. Behind him, giant screens displayed live ledgers of his companies, every dollar, every contract, every audit scrolling for the world to see. "You've seen the rumors," he began, his voice firm. "Now see the receipts. I have nothing to hide. Can my enemies say the same?" The room buzzed. Reporters gasped as transparency weaponized itself. Within hours, financial experts confirmed the data. Clean, airtight. The smear campaign faltered. Instead of looking guilty, Darius looked invincible. But victory had a cost. That night, one of his community centers caught fire. Smoke billowed into the night sky, children and parents evacuated as alarms screamed. Firefighters controlled it before lives were lost, but the damage was clear. Someone wanted him afraid. Darius arrived in person, walking among ashes and charred computers. A child tugged his sleeve, eyes wide. "Will the center come back?" Darius crouched, meeting the boy's gaze. "Stronger than before," he promised. Cameras captured the moment, and by morning the image of Darius, soot-stained and resolute, went viral. If his enemies wanted to frighten him, they had only made him a symbol. Behind the scenes, however, the war escalated. Miriam traced the smear leaks to a consortium of contractors, names Darius had already suspected. The same network tied to Alyssa's supervisor. Marcus slapped the file onto the table. There's your cabal. These aren't just petty enemies. These are people who've made fortunes off exploitation. Darius studied the list in silence, each name like a chess piece waiting to be toppled. Finally, he said, "Then we'll turn their fortress into glass, one crack at a time." Meanwhile, Alyssa tried to stay relevant. She filmed another live stream, this time more furious than sorrowful. "He's destroying more than me. He's destroying workers' rights. He's making himself untouchable." But fewer tuned in now. The sympathy had drained, leaving only bitterness. Comment sections tore her apart. "You slapped him, you lied, own it." Even unions distanced themselves. She had become what Darius predicted, a pawn discarded by the very system she tried to protect. Still, the consortium moved in shadows. Late one night, Marcus drove home from a meeting when a black SUV swerved, nearly forcing him off the road. He escaped, shaken but unhurt. When he told Darius, fury glinted behind his brother's calm. "They've touched family," Darius murmured, his voice a blade. "That's their last mistake." The next day he went public again, this time on national television. The interviewer leaned forward, hungry for drama. "Mr. Cole, they say you're overreacting, that this began with a single slap." Darius didn't flinch. "No," he said evenly. "It began with arrogance. Arrogance that believed a black man, even a billionaire, could be struck and silenced. But I refuse silence. This is bigger than me. It's about every life dismissed, every injustice buried. If they want to call that an overreaction, let them. History will call it something else." The clip ricocheted across the world. Hashtags surged again. Refuse silence. Cole legacy. By evening, threats multiplied. Emails, calls, even a brick through one of his office windows. Miriam begged him to increase security. Marcus demanded retaliation. But Darius stood calm at the center of the storm. "They think pressure will break me," he said. "But pressure forges diamonds, and I intend to shine until they're blinded." He gazed out at the city, the bruise on his cheek fading but never forgotten. It wasn't just skin. It was scripture now, a mark that told the story of what happens when power meets defiance. And he whispered into the night, almost to himself, "This is no longer about a slap. This is about legacy." Stay with this story. The consortium has drawn blood by striking at his family, and Darius Cole is about to turn their game against them in ways they never expected. The city woke to smoke, metaphorical and real. Darius Cole's name filled every broadcast, every headline. Billionaire CEO under siege, community center in flames. Who's afraid of Darius Cole? Opinion divided, but fascination united. Even his enemies couldn't look away. They wanted him broken, but the more they struck, the stronger his image grew. To the people, he wasn't just a man anymore. He was becoming a movement. In his penthouse, the morning light caught his reflection. Cheekbone healed now, but memory burned hotter than the wound. Marcus sat opposite him at the dining table, rubbing tired eyes. "You know they won't stop," he muttered. "First smears, then fires, then trying to run me off the road. Next time it'll be worse." Darius poured coffee for them both, unhurried. "Good," he said. Marcus blinked. "Good?" Darius met his gaze. "Because escalation means exposure, and exposure means the mask slips. I want the world to see their face before I tear it off." Miriam arrived minutes later, heels clicking sharp across marble. She carried a thick folder. "We traced the SUV, rented through a shell company tied to Callahan Enterprises, one of the consortium names." She slid the file forward. "It's confirmation." Marcus swore under his breath. "So we take it to the feds?" Miriam shook her head. "They'll bury it. Too many contracts, too much influence. You need more leverage." Darius closed the folder softly. "Then we'll build it." That afternoon, he convened his team in the tower's war room. Maps, charts, and data filled the walls like battle plans. "This isn't just business," he told them. "This is war. But wars aren't won with fists. They're won with stories, with proof, with strategy." He pointed to the consortium's names. "Every one of them has a skeleton. We find it, we drag it into daylight. Leonard hesitated. That will make you untouchable, or it'll paint the biggest target you've ever had. Darius's eyes glinted. So be it. Better to be a target than a pawn. Meanwhile, Alyssa clawed for relevance. She accepted an invitation to a prime-time debate, sitting across from an activist who once supported her. The activist shredded her excuses. You struck a man, Alyssa. Not just any man. A black CEO. You thought wealth meant weakness. That's what systemic bias looks like. Alyssa's practiced tears faltered. Viewers turned against her in real time. Social media mocked her, memes spreading faster than her words. Her attempt to weaponize victimhood collapsed under the weight of truth, but the consortium adapted. Weeks of failed smears turned into something sharper. A dossier leaked, Darius's private schedule, addresses of his family, even Marcus's gym routine. A threat wrapped in exposure. Marcus slammed it on the table. They're telling us they can touch us anywhere. Miriam's jaw tightened. This isn't intimidation anymore. It's destabilization. Darius, however, remained composed. Then let them follow me everywhere. Let them watch every step. I will not run. I will not hide. And when I bring them down, everyone will know I did it in plain sight. The next strike came swift. A senator, funded quietly by consortium money, called for investigations into Darius's foundation. Too much unchecked influence, the senator barked on live TV. One man should not hold such power over infrastructure, education, and healthcare. Commentators debated furiously. Was Darius a hero or a tyrant in disguise? Darius watched the broadcast, expression unreadable. Marcus growled, "They're turning your strength into your weakness." Darius finally smiled. Exactly. That means they're running out of weapons. He countered not with lawyers, but with people. Within 48 hours, volunteers flooded his foundation, teachers and parents sending testimonies, students posting videos. Ellison built my school. I got my first scholarship because of him. He saved my neighborhood. The senator's narrative collapsed beneath the avalanche of lived truth. What was meant to smear him instead amplified his legacy, yet shadows thickened. One night, as Darius left the tower, a man stepped from the darkness. Hood low, face hidden, security tensed, weapons ready. The man raised his hands. "Message," he rasped, voice hoarse. He dropped an envelope at Darius's feet, then fled into alleys before anyone could react. Inside, a single photo. Marcus, candid, leaving the community center, scrawled across the bottom, "Next time, we don't miss." Marcus cursed when he saw it. Miriam pressed for relocation, secure houses, federal protection. Darius stared at the photo, silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "If they want Marcus, they'll have to come through me. And when they do, I'll pull the curtain down on all of them." His voice was calm, but inside, the fire raged hotter than ever. He looked out over the city that night, its towers sharp against the stars. They thought they were writing his downfall. He was writing his legend, and legends don't bow to threats. They rise through them. Stay with this story. The consortium has crossed a line, targeting blood, and Darius Cole is about to strike back with a fury they never anticipated. The morning after the threat, the city felt different, brighter for some, heavier for others. For Darius Cole, it was neither. It was sharper. The lines between him and his enemies had finally clarified. There would be no negotiations, no quiet settlements. This was a confrontation written in fire. Marcus paced the penthouse, phone clutched tight. "They're playing with my life, D, and yours. This isn't just intimidation anymore." His voice cracked with anger. "What if next time it's real? What if they don't miss?" Darius set down his coffee cup with surgical calm. "Then we end them before they can try again." Marcus froze, searching his brother's eyes. There was no bravado there, only cold precision. Miriam arrived, bringing fresh intelligence. "The consortium is fracturing," she reported, spreading documents across the glass table. "Some members want to cut losses. Others are doubling down, trying to break you before the investigations hit." She tapped a photo of Keller Callahan, the contractor at the heart of it all. "He's the linchpin. If he falls, the network collapses." Darius leaned forward, his gaze a predator's. "Then we pull him down, publicly." That night, Darius held a private meeting in the underbelly of Ellison Tower. Not with executives, but with whistleblowers, former employees, silenced contractors, marginalized workers chewed up by the consortium machine, their stories spilled like gasoline, wage theft, unsafe sites, bribed inspectors. Darius listened, absorbing every detail. He didn't promise justice with words. His silence was heavier than speeches, his presence itself a contract. When the last voice trembled into silence, he said only, "You'll be heard, all of you, loud enough the world won't forget." Meanwhile, Alyssa reappeared, this time as a pawn weaponized by the consortium. She stood at a rally funded in shadows, flanked by hired protesters waving signs. "He ruined me," she shouted into microphones. "He wants to ruin all of you." But the crowd was thin, the energy hollow. Journalists noted the buses that dropped people off, the staged chants. Online, the rally was shredded, fake outrage, bought voices, empty noise. Darius didn't even mention her name anymore. He'd already moved beyond her. The real war came days later. A coordinated smear campaign flooded the internet. Doctored videos suggesting Darius berated staff, falsified contracts implying corruption, anonymous accounts spreading whispers of violence. For a moment, the noise swelled louder than truth. Stock tickers jittered, investors called nervously. Leonard stormed into Darius's office, face pale. "We're bleeding, you have to respond." Darius turned from the window, his expression carved from steel. "We don't respond to lies. We reveal truth so large it swallows them whole." That truth came at a press conference unlike any other, not staged in a polished hall, but in front of the burned-out remains of his community center. Behind him stood children, parents, teachers, all beneficiaries of his foundation. Cameras clicked wildly as he spoke. "They tried to smear me. They tried to burn this place. They even tried to take my family, but look around you, we're still here. And tomorrow we'll rebuild twice as strong. Their corruption is the real fire, and I promise you this, I will put it out." The crowd erupted, chants shaking the air. Reporters broadcast live as donations surged worldwide. What was meant to destroy him became fuel. Miriam leaned close afterward, whispering, "You just turned ashes into armor." Darius only nodded. "And now, we strike back." That evening, he unveiled the whistleblower files, tens of thousands of documents tying the consortium to fraud, endangerment, bribery. News outlets devoured them, investigations launched instantly. Callahan's name blazed across headlines, his empire collapsing overnight. The city buzzed with outrage. Protests erupted outside consortium offices. The machine was breaking, faster than even Darius expected. But broken machines thrash hardest before they die. As Marcus left the tower late one night, headlights flared, another SUV, this time blocking his path. Masked men stepped out, weapons glinting. Before Marcus could react, Darius's security detail materialized, trained rifles cutting through shadows. The standoff lasted seconds before the men fled, tires squealing into the night. Marcus stumbled into the lobby, shaken but alive. Darius was waiting. He gripped his brother's shoulders, voice low and lethal. They tried twice. They won't get a third. The next morning, Darius addressed his staff with words that felt like prophecy. They thought they slapped a man. What they really did was awaken a legacy, and that legacy is about to bury them. Stay with this story. The consortium is breaking, but its final strike will test not only Darius Cole's empire, but the very limits of his resolve. The city was boiling. Protests surged outside courthouses, news trucks clogged intersections, and talk shows replayed the slap that had started it all. But now the narrative was no longer about a single flight attendant. It was about the empire behind her, and the billionaire who refused to bow. Darius Cole had turned personal humiliation into a crusade, and the world was watching to see if he would finish it. Marcus stood at the penthouse window, arms crossed, jaw tight. "They're cornered," he muttered. "That makes them dangerous." Darius adjusted his cufflinks, his reflection a study in calm. "A cornered animal only proves its weakness. We'll show the world." Miriam, arriving with yet another folder, was less optimistic. "Callahan's people are bleeding, but not dead. They've lost contracts, yes, but they still have allies in high places, and if you press further, those allies will move." Darius turned to her, eyes like cold fire. "Then let them. I don't fight shadows. I drag them into daylight." The next move came brutally. Overnight, an anonymous video spread online, footage of a man being beaten in a warehouse. Subtitles labeled him as a whistleblower from Darius's files. The implication was clear. Helping Darius meant death. The video racked millions of views before being debunked as staged. But the fear it planted was real. Marcus slammed his fist against the table. "They're terrorizing people into silence." Miriam's face was pale. "This is psychological warfare." Darius stood, his voice iron. "Then we answer not with fear but with fury." That evening he summoned reporters again. No screens, no graphs, just his voice. "They want you afraid," he declared. "Afraid to speak, afraid to stand, afraid to fight. But I was raised in fear. I built my empire in defiance of it. And I promise you, no threat will silence me, or you." The clip lit up the globe, translated into half a dozen languages. In São Paulo, activists chanted his name. In Lagos, murals of his face appeared overnight. What began as a scandal had become something else entirely, a movement. But Callahan was not finished. He held a meeting in a shadowed restaurant, voices low, glasses untouched. "Cole's turning into a martyr," one of his allies hissed. Callahan's eyes narrowed. "Then we stop treating him like an adversary. We treat him like a target." Silence fell across the table. He slid a photo of Marcus forward. "Family? That's where we strike. Cole thinks he's untouchable. Let's prove him wrong." The trap sprung 2 nights later. Marcus was lured to a supposed meeting with community leaders. Instead, masked men shoved him into a van, the door slamming shut before his security could react. The van vanished into city streets like smoke. When the call came, Miriam's voice shook. "They've taken him." For the first time, the calm mask cracked. Darius gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles went white. "Find him," he said, every word a blade. "Whatever it takes, find him." The abduction dominated headlines instantly. Brother of billionaire CEO kidnapped. Protesters clashed with police demanding answers. The city trembled on edge. Miriam pressed Darius to negotiate, but he refused. "Negotiation is surrender. I don't deal with kidnappers. I end them." His eyes burned with a fury Marcus had never seen before. The bruise on his cheek was long gone, but its ghost remained, fueling the fire. Hours stretched into eternity. Then came the message. A grainy photo of Marcus bound to a chair, bruised but alive. Scrawled across it in red marker, "Step down, or he dies." Miriam gasped. "They want your empire." Darius's jaw tightened. "No, they want me to bow. And that's the one thing I will never do." He gathered his closest allies in the tower's underground command room. Screens flickered with city maps, traffic cams, satellite feeds. Darius stood at the center, unflinching. "We're not calling the police," he said. "They're compromised. We find Marcus ourselves, and when we do, we expose every name behind this. Not just Callahan, all of them." His voice dropped lower. "This isn't about saving my brother. This is about ending their reign." The room buzzed with urgency, but above it all was Darius's voice, calm as ever. "They slapped me once," he murmured, staring at Marcus's photo. "Now they've touched my blood. That was their final mistake." Stay with this story, because Marcus's abduction will push Darius Cole into the darkest battle yet, where calm won't be enough. He'll need to wield fire. The command room buzzed with tension, monitors glowing like portals to the city. Grainy traffic feeds, heat maps and satellite overlays flashed across the wall, all centered on one goal, finding Marcus. Darius Cole stood at the head of the table, hands clasped behind his back, his presence a weight heavier than steel. He didn't pace. He didn't shout. He simply was, and that steadiness anchored everyone in the room. Miriam leaned over a laptop, voice clipped. "We traced the metadata on the photo. It pinged through 3 proxies, but one bounced off an old police subnet, Precinct 14, shut down years ago." Marcus's image glowed from the center screen, bound, bruised, defiant. Darius studied the background, the water stain, the cracked tiles. "That precinct fits." He turned to his team. "That's where we go." Leonard's voice trembled. "With respect, you're a CEO, not a soldier." Darius's eyes cut sharp. "I built this empire brick by brick while men like Callahan tried to bury me. Don't mistake composure for weakness. I'm going." His tone left no room for argument. The convoy left the tower in silence, 3 SUVs slicing through midnight streets. The city blurred past. Neon lights, graffiti walls, shuttered stores. In the lead vehicle, Darius sat with Miriam beside him, her jaw tight, eyes darting between feeds on her tablet. "This is reckless," she whispered. "No," he replied, calm but fierce. "This is justice." They arrived at the precinct, brick crumbling, windows shattered, graffiti screaming from the walls. The place stank of mildew and rot. Security fanned out, weapons raised. Darius stepped forward first, leather shoes crunching glass. Inside, the corridors echoed with dripping pipes and the scuttle of rats. Flashlights cut through the dark, beams quivering across peeling paint. And then, a sound, a muffled cough. Marcus. They followed the noise to a chained door. Bolt cutters snapped the lock. The door swung open. Marcus sat bound to a chair, bruised but alive, fire still blazing in his eyes. "Took you long enough," he rasped. Darius dropped to one knee, cutting the ropes himself. For a moment, composure cracked. Relief flashed in his eyes as he gripped his brother's shoulders. "You're safe now," Marcus smirked weakly. "Safe, not with you around." But the reunion was cut short. A slow clap echoed down the corridor. From the shadows stepped Callahan himself, flanked by masked men. His smirk gleamed under the flicker of dying bulbs. "Touching," he sneered. "But this is where your story ends, Cole." His men raised weapons, the air thick with menace. Darius rose slowly, placing himself between Marcus and Callahan. His voice carried no fear. "No, Callahan, this is where yours ends." The tension vibrated like a held breath. Callahan chuckled, lifting a pistol. "You really think calm words stop bullets?" Darius's stare was unflinching. "No, but truth does. And right now, the world is watching." At his signal, Miriam tapped her tablet. Hidden body cams and drones streamed the entire standoff live. Millions tuned in as the feed lit up social media. Callahan's smirk faltered. "You—" Darius cut him off. "You wanted me silenced. Instead, you handed me the stage. Pull that trigger, and you don't kill me, you crown me." The masked men shifted uneasily, glancing at the cameras. One lowered his weapon, then another. Callahan's grip tightened on his pistol, desperation seeping through his bravado. "You think this makes you untouchable," he hissed. Darius stepped closer, fearless. "No, it makes me undeniable." The world watched as Callahan's empire cracked in real time. His men backed away, unwilling to carry his burden. Sirens wailed in the distance, federal agents closing in. Callahan raised the pistol higher, voice breaking with rage. "I'll finish this myself." For a heartbeat, the room froze. Marcus shouted, "D!" But Darius didn't flinch. He spread his arms, calm as stone. "Do it. Make me eternal. Stay with this story. The final strike is seconds away. And what happens next will decide not just the fate of Darius Cole, but the legacy he leaves behind." The pistol trembled in Callahan's grip, a bead of sweat sliding down his temple. The dying light bulb overhead flickered, throwing shadows that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of his ragged breath. Across from him, Darius Cole stood calm, arms spread, unflinching. His voice echoed in the corridor like prophecy. "Do it. Make me eternal." For a moment, time froze. Marcus, bruised but unbroken, tensed behind his brother. Miriam's fingers hovered over her tablet, the live stream feeding millions across the globe. Callahan's men shifted, the weight of history pressing heavy on their shoulders. And then, Callahan faltered. His pistol wavered, the mask of control slipping to reveal raw fear. The calm in Darius's eyes had undone him. The first agent's shout shattered the silence. "Federal task force, weapons down!" Boots thundered through the precinct as armed agents stormed the building, rifles leveled. Callahan whipped his head toward the sound, panic flashing. He swung the pistol back to Darius, but too late. A red dot from a sniper sight bloomed on his chest. "Drop it," an agent barked. Callahan's smirk twisted into desperation, then collapsed. The gun clattered to the floor, echoing like the end of an era. The livestream captured everything. Callahan shackled, his empire in ruins, his men disarmed and silent. The world saw not just corruption exposed, but corruption defeated. Darius stepped forward, his presence commanding even in the chaos. "You thought humiliation would destroy me," he said, his voice carrying beyond the walls. "But humiliation is only power if you accept it. I never bowed, and I never will." Outside, crowds gathered as news spread in real time. Chants rose into the night sky. "Cole, Cole, Cole." For the first time, Marcus leaned on his brother's shoulder, not from weakness, but from pride. "You didn't just win," he whispered. "You rewrote the whole damn game." Days later, Callahan's empire crumbled fully. Executives were indicted, contracts dissolved, senators scrambled to distance themselves. Alyssa vanished from headlines, remembered only as the slap that sparked a revolution. But Darius didn't gloat. He rebuilt. The burned community center reopened with double capacity. Scholarships expanded. Transparency became not just his shield, but a model copied by other corporations. At a press event weeks later, Darius stood before a sea of cameras, Marcus beside him, Miriam at his flank. His words carried the weight of legacy. "They tried to turn me into a victim. Instead, they turned me into a mirror. And in that mirror, the world saw every injustice too long ignored. This fight was never just mine. It belongs to everyone who refuses to bow." The crowd erupted. Hashtags surged again, not in anger this time, but in celebration. "Refuse to bow. Row Cole legacy. Row from slap to crown." Darius gazed out at the cameras, the bruise long healed, but the memory etched eternal. He knew his grandmother's voice would be whispering still. The floor remembers every footprint. He had left his. That night, on the balcony of his tower, Marcus joined him with 2 glasses of whiskey. "So," Marcus asked, "does this mean it's over?" Darius swirled his glass, the city lights glittering below. "No," he said softly. "This was only the beginning. They slapped me once, Marcus. The world will try again, but now they know." He turned, eyes sharp as steel. "Now they know I can't be broken." And as the city pulsed with chants, headlines, and history, Darius Cole stood tall, not just as a billionaire, not just as a CEO, but as a symbol. A man who turned humiliation into fire, fire into power, and power into legacy. Because the slap was never the end. It was the crown,